We're here with Shawn. Thank you for joining us on Business Minds. We want to know. I want to know so much. I have so many questions. Let's start with, are you, how long you've been in Naples, and what business or businesses do you own currently?
Well, first of all, I'd say I'm an entrepreneur. I just read something this morning. Like, that's probably one of the hardest things to describe when people ask. I play a lot of golf, and the question that I hate the most is, what do you do? So I'm not really sure exactly what to lead with. My wife and I are consultants. We run a group called Black Diamond Club. But we also are chiropractors by profession, both of us. We own a chiropractic franchise called the Specific Chiropractic Centers. We have offices across the country. One just opened recently here, recently, a week ago or so, down in South Tamiami, South Naples. We also are starting a franchise of our own, a wellness franchise, in partnership with a few other people called Well Infused. So they're custom IVs. So we do blood draws, then curate IVs for our clients. We're also franchisees. We own 7 Ever Bowl, which are acai bowls. So we own 7 Ever Bowl stores, none of them in Florida, sort of across Tennessee, Arkansas, and Texas. And then a host of other bizarre things that we are have our hand in here, there, everywhere. My Naples story is actually pretty interesting. I live part-time in Indiana, in a suburb of northern Indiana called Carmel. I grew up at high school age in Fort Wayne, Indiana. For whatever reason, I always wanted to move back to Carmel. Carmel, Indiana is the home of a golf club called Crooked Stick, where John Daly won the PGA championship. Actually, just a couple of weekends ago, I had the honor of meeting John Daly for the first time up in Sarasota, Clearwater. They had an event there. For whatever reason, I wanted to move there. I had this dream of being a member at Crooked Stick. I'm not a member at Crooked Stick, but I told my wife, I met her in the San Francisco Bay Area. We lived there for many, many years, and I told her I always wanted to get back there. So we moved there. Eventually, I convinced her. We moved there. I'm not a member at Crooked Stick. We joined some other country club, and at that club, everybody there in the first winter when we went in, not everybody, it was just a few guys in the bar, and they looked at me and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What am I doing here?" And they were like, "Well, everybody's in Naples." And I was like, "Why are they in Naples?" He said, No, everybody that you just played golf with this whole summer, they all just get up and they all go to Naples. And I literally said, I was like, that sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm not going to Naples. Well, the second winter that I was there, it was like minus 50. We're about to get that. I just said I was in California. I was in Indiana last night, flew back here just in time because it's about to go winter storm and super cold. But it was like minus 50 degrees, and we went in there, and that same guy was there. And I was like, "Hey, tell me about Naples." And so he was like, "Oh, all the guys, we go down there." And my wife, when it was 50 degrees, minus 50, she was like, "We should look at doing this." So I told him, he had a condo. I'm actually in Bonita Springs. I was like, "Hey, I'd like to just buy your condo." And I told my wife, I said, "What's the worst that could happen?" This was a couple years ago. "What's the worst that could happen? If we don't like it, we'll sell it." And I went to him and I was like, "Hey, so seriously, I'd like to buy the condo." And he's like, "No, I just sold it." I was like, "Oh my gosh, well, that sucks." So I went on Facebook and I asked, "Does anybody know a realtor in Naples?" We were referred to an amazing realtor. His name is Rick Marquardt. And Rick then started sending us places, like links to places. And we saw one and we bought it. And so when we came down to Naples it was being built. And so he came down to talk to the sales guy. I asked him, I was like, "So what do you do here in Naples?" And he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, what is there to do?" And he's like, "But you just bought this, place. This is your place." And I had never been to Naples. I got to say though, it didn't take very long. I consider Naples my home. So I spend the majority of my time here. I don't know. My wife loves Naples, but she also still loves Indiana, except when it's cold. I can stay here year round, no problem. The heat doesn't bother me. The cold bothers me. So, I mean, you'll probably see me more in Naples.
In Naples,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. So
now I know why he can't explain what he does.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Now you can say exactly what you do.
Well, you have your hands in a lot of things, and you started being a chiropractor, right? How did you? Why did you decide to go that route?
Why did I decide to become a chiropractor?
Yes.
My cousin was a chiropractor. He practiced in Wisconsin, and he made tons of money. So I was very impressionable when I was super young. But he also really cared about chiropractic. So he really got me into the profession. Part of my story that I didn't tell you is that I graduated chiropractic college from Logan Chiropractic College, which is in St. Louis-ish, outside of St. Louis, in 1995. At the end of 1995, I moved to Costa Rica, and I lived there for 8 years. I authored the law. When I went there, there was no law, so it was just kind of like the Wild West. You just showed up, and you could have been a chiropractor. Everybody was a chiropractor, right? So I authored the law that regulates chiropractic to this day. Lobbied for it. When I went to Costa Rica, I spoke zero Spanish, like absolutely zero. So my first year in business was all the school of hard knocks. Like it was brutal. Like imagine trying to do some sort of healthcare anything and you can't communicate with the people and they can't communicate with you. Like they're talking to me and I'm like, I don't even know. They just lay down and so it was a mess. I was able to learn Spanish. I have the best methodology. You don't need Babbel or any of those things. What you should do if you want to learn another language is read the newspaper. I read the newspaper every single day from cover to cover. Most newspapers are written at third grade language level, but they have perfect grammar. So I just read the newspaper every day, and because of just context, more, like they're going to be talking about the World Cup, and they're talking about Argentina, and they're talking about Lionel Messi, so you're not lost.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of figure out like what's happening, and that's how I taught myself to speak Spanish. Left Costa Rica when my daughters were getting of school age. The education there wasn't exactly the best for what I wanted for them. Moved back to the States. And when I moved back to the States, moved back to the San Francisco area.
Okay. If being a chiropractor paid $40,000 to $50,000 a year, would you have gone that direction?
I mean, ultimately, probably. The interest, my cousin, his license plate, during the 80s, healthcare was very different. His license plate was the number 3, then BMWS. He had 3 BMWs. And so being young, I was like, oh, that was interesting. But then what happened is I fell in love with the concepts, the idea of being a chiropractor, helping people with natural health care, the idea that the body heals itself. And that's still at the end of the day what I'm about. I'm the chairman of the board at Sherman College of Chiropractic, which is in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Like I said, we have our franchise. I ultimately believe, look, for anybody watching, that is my secret weapon. You were saying that you guys were up late last night. So as entrepreneurs, we're always looking for these health hacks. We want to be able to perform at our absolute best. We do understand that living off of Red Bull or Monster or coffee, we're just, ultimately, draining our adrenal glands, and we're going to pay a price down the road. I think every entrepreneur that has a passion for what they want to do in life wants to live forever. So, that's the idea behind the Well Infused franchise concepts, looking at things that we can do to, slow down the aging process, increase the recovery process. The thought process today too is very interesting in health, is that in this year, we have the ability to look at your biological age. I don't know if you saw recently, Dana White did some of this testing and lost all this weight, because we can predict with a pretty high degree of accuracy when you will die. But the other thing is you can modify that, you can change that. So the concept that I really fell in love with is really easy, is what if we could just reduce our biological age by 1 year every year? So if you reduce your biological age by 1 year every year through lifestyle, through things that we were doing, theoretically you will live forever. And I think that you know, there's people that are, you know, maybe your kids, they have a shot at living to 120, 130, maybe even 150 with today's, you know.
Our grandmother is 102 right now.
Yeah, so I mean, but think about that. So like your grandmother without this,
Exactly.
now imagine that now we have all of this knowledge, and the breakthroughs are coming more in sort of the natural realm versus, you know, going back to an understanding of how we should eat, how we should sleep, how we should take care of ourselves. And so, yeah, now I'm super passionate about it. And I think every year that I get older, I get more passionate about it because then this becomes more of a reality. I think when you're young, it's easy. I mean, for me too, it's easy to lose sight. Like, you know, hey, we're just gonna, you know, get this job done, do this project. We could go for 3 days and not sleep. Then later on in life, you realize like we actually have to be very conscious of what we eat and how we're sleeping and how we're treating our bodies.
We were just talking last night.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. The time just
I woke up, I felt like I went to like a club. And I'm only 25. Like seriously.
Yeah.
Do you feel like as you start getting older in life, you start becoming like more attached to life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I'm 51. Then you start to think like, all right, so how much time do I have left? What do I still want to accomplish? I think from a business perspective, you know, my wife and I, we've been abundantly blessed. So I can't, and when I was young, we were chasing, I remember when it was like, we would say like, oh, when we just make 6 figures, then, you know, then everything will be different. And then you're like, well, if we make $500,000, everything will be different. And you're always on this brink. And one of the things I get a lot too is like, that never changes, right? So it doesn't matter what you're doing. Then you just start to wonder what the next thing looks like, feels like.
Do you think it maximizes who you are?
Yeah, because eventually you do have to have a consideration. I frequently get asked a lot by people I work with, like, when is enough enough? I mean, and that's going to be different for every single person. But at some point, you know, we're in the holiday season. You know, for my family, I'm like, you know, don't buy me anything. Like anything that I would want, like on a Tuesday, I'll just go buy it. Like I don't have to wait till Christmas anymore. And that's not a brag. That's just a realization that like, well, then other things become important, right? I do remember when I was young and I wanted an iPad, right? Like, so that was important to me. But now things shift, things change. Yeah.
And we were actually talking about that on the last interview, and I think every 5 or 10 years, your priorities change, right? And then the things that you probably wanted, and it's okay to want things at a certain age, right?
Absolutely.
Because then you're gonna end up wanting them when you're like probably, I don't know, 50, 60, 70. But
you might not be able to enjoy that Corvette when you're
getting out is a problem. So so I think there's always something for every age, and there's nothing wrong. But of course you gotta keep your priorities, you know. And do you think it's like a little, it's complicated because priorities for people are completely different, right? To for example, for you, success could be totally different than another person, right? And then what do you think about being like finding yourself before you hit financial success?
Well, I think it's a quest. I don't know that I've found myself, right? Like everybody's on this journey, you grow. You're constantly evolving what you thought was possible in your 20s. Hopefully in your 30s, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so small thinking. And then what you thought was possible in your 30s, in your 40s, you're like, wow, that was, you know, why did I think we wanted like that? Why did I think I wanted to make 500,000? Like what a weird thought to have, right? Like why that's so limiting. But I do remember clearly when it wasn't limiting, when I couldn't even imagine what that would look like, what that would feel like. I don't know what that would be like. But then all of a sudden doors start opening. And I think that's part of it too, in finding yourself. A lot of it is your willingness to step through into the unknown. Part of, like, you know, back to what we were talking about with your body, the way that your body stays healthy is that your environment constantly changes, gets cold, gets hot. Your body adapts to that, and every successful adaptation is a sign of health. So when you work out, you break down, it's damaging, it's adversarial to your body successfully adapts, you get stronger. But life is the same way. I think that a lot of times, like if you want to make $1 million a year and you make $100,000 a year, you have to change the environment. So you have to be in an environment with people that are making $1 million. I remember that's nervous. That's nerve wracking. You go maybe to a restaurant and people are like, yeah, let's order this. And you're like, I hope they don't ask me to pay for it, right? Like, you know, so it's nerve-wracking, but what it does is if you successfully adapt to it, then you expand into it. Right. Then when you're there, you can decide like, well, this is comfortable. I'm the king of the $1 million makers, or you could say, I want to hang around with Deca millionaires. And I want to see what that looks. And it's not just hanging around. It's like doing business with, engaging with, and feeling really uncomfortable about being in that environment. And either you successfully adapt to it or you don't. So I don't know how high it goes. You know, I don't know. I mean, we know like people like Elon Musk. What's funny is because like through social media, you know, in your guys' field, there are people that leverage social media to make it very clear that they are billionaires. The majority of the world's billionaires, if we were to give a list of the top, you know, 100 people and just go out on the street, the majority of the people wouldn't recognize the names of most of those people because they're not on social media saying, look how wealthy I am. But it would still be really uncomfortable if we brought them in here, even for all of us. If we brought, you know, the number 8 person off the list, we would all be like, whoa, okay. Like we would act differently. We wouldn't know what to say. We would be like, oh my gosh, what do we do? But the thing is, can we challenge ourselves to be uncomfortable and adapt to that environment? Right.
Is it, and would you say the path to success, you have to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations? Like there is no avoidance.
Otherwise, you just stay where you are. Right. And I see that a lot. You know, let's look at your guys' business. You guys could easily become like the digital agency of Naples, but and that would be great. And you guys would be like, hey, we're doing it. We just go around Naples. We don't have to pay for anything because these guys are all our clients. But then one day you go like to Sarasota or Clearwater or Orlando, and you're like, but nobody knows us here. So you get to decide. Do we want to expand into that, or do I want to go back to Naples, right? Because it wasn't as comfortable being in Clearwater where nobody knew who you were.
So with scale comes a whole different.
Oh, I love that conversation.
Right? So with scale comes a different.
Scale is a totally different ballgame.
Yes.
There's 2 concepts that I think in business people confuse, and that's growth and scale. They're 2 totally different things. So growth, the example that I use, and this super applies to your industry, is if we all are at the casino and I walk in and I put $1 into the slot machine and it just goes doo-doo, and out comes $2. I'm like, oh wow. So I take one of the $2 that I won and I put it back in and out comes $2. I was like, well, I won 2 in a row, and I do it again, $1 and $2, $1. Then I'm like, hey, I get you. I'm like, Rodrigo, something's what's going on here? Every time I put $1 in, I get $2, and I think the machine's broken. Like I put $1 in and get $2. At that point, what do? We put dollars in as fast as we can. So now we're just doing this, and it just keeps coming, $1, $2. It never is 5. It's never 10. And it's never 0. It's just $1 in, $2 out. That's growth. It's very linear. A lot of people get really confused, and I'm sure it probably caused you guys some frustration. In growth, it's a matter of how much money can I spend. When I have the formula, the more I spend, the more top line revenue I get. Once the ads are working, we put the money in, because the more money we spend, the more revenue we get. Some people get scared. Oh, I don't want to do $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month. That seems high. Right, but I mean, we're trying to put dollars in as fast as we can. Scale, though, says, look, what hurts me, and this is why people get resistance, what hurts me is at the end of the month, yes, I had big top line revenue, but I also had all of these expenses. And what do I do? Well, scale gets disproportionate top line revenue results without the resulting expense that comes. Is there a way? So what if I had 2 locations and I ran a single set of ads with 1 set of ad spend, but was able to produce revenue into 2 places? Now I'm in scale. Or maybe I then had 2 providers, so I start to look at ways that I can move into scale. Most people talk about scale, but they practice growth, and then they get frustrated because Their expenses are running away from them.
Right.
They're making tons of money. There's so many businesses that are $1 million businesses, but they're only keeping $100,000 of it, right? Because they're in growth.
Yeah.
Scale is the $1 million business, right? They're doing $1 million and they're keeping like 800,000 of it, and you're like, how is that? And it's like, because it was the same 200,000 that I used to grow, and now I'm just doing it in multiple verticals or multiple units, or now I've scaled
Do
out.
you think it's reducing cost, growing sales?
Well, it's not reducing costs. It's in scale. It's looking for that exponential boost. Like somehow in scale, I'm putting $1 in, and then this machine next to it, like money fell out, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Now this machine's producing money from this machine's input. So if I'm inputting into one spot, but I'm getting outputs from multiple human asset, multiple physical locations, that's now where I'm into scale.
Right. And would you say for what you do, you are that that point where it hits you and trickles into everything you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
because it looks like
where I make the most of my money is on one-on-one consulting, right? So I work with people one-on-one. That's the highest ticket that we have, or doing events, right? But that's limited by me. So there's only so many hours that I could work with somebody or talk with somebody. So scale means, yes, let's put some money into these franchise concepts. Let's invest in real estate. Let's produce cash flowing investments on other things, so that the $1 that comes in, it can be pushed out, scalable, and it can then start producing $10 or $100 or $1,000.
For your personal brand, it does that also, right?
Correct.
With you being online, on socials, speaking, and putting out content, people will see something that you're putting out, and then they just want to browse through. What does Shawn do? What's he involved in? You know, so that's, what do you think about? Do you need to develop a personal brand in today's time? Is it quicker? Does it accelerate the process in your growth?
100%.
Yeah.
But because you said in today's time, and we're moving into a phase of economic uncertainty. And so I would say the last 5 years coming up to today, a lot of it was because we were flush with money. People would make decisions based off, say, Yelp reviews, Google reviews. You know, Google My Business, super important, because I would look at it online and I would be like, well, this one's got 1,000 reviews, it's got 4.5 stars. And that was the determinant factor. When money is tighter, and I'm not trying to just like, well, I'll just give money to this thing, and if it goes wrong, it's not that bad, I'll just switch to this other thing. I start to use different criteria to make a decision. For example, in healthcare, I'm not just going to say like, well, let's just go to Mayo Clinic because they're the best. I'm going to drill down even further and say, okay, so within this system, who do I want to see? And who's going to emerge are the personal brands. I might decide that I need help with digital marketing. I look online, there's several options. Which one do I choose? Today, rather than just saying this is the most popular, has the most reviews, and if I don't like it, I'll switch to number 2, I am going to say, well, let me look around, let me poke around. Who's going to emerge? The ones that have the strong personal brands. And I think it's a very dangerous time, I think, right now, as we make a little bit of a shift with our economy, because consumeristic decision making is radically changing the way that they're making their buying time decisions. It's not just reviews. It was a lot of reviews and it was a lot of SEO. Now people have a degree of skepticism. You're seeing like what's going on with the different platforms, with Twitter. So now people are like, oh my gosh, maybe even Facebook and the platforms are lying to me. So I want to vet this out more. So what they're trying to do is, rather than attach to Facebook said this one was the best one, they're looking around and saying, I like this choice because I resonate with this person. And I think personal brand, I mean, you know, with the work that you guys do is so powerful, because personal brand also is not just what I do, right? Even for me, we were talking beforehand, coming and doing this interview with you guys helps my personal brand. We're not promoting anything, but it helps people to decide whether or not they like me and that whether or not that I would be someone they would want to do business with.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what's your thoughts on work-life balance when you're an entrepreneur?
Well, I get a lot of heat from this. I was just telling my wife that I do see a conscious shift occurring, and a lot of the quote unquote gurus, a lot of the personal brands are really beginning to promote this whole work-life balance thing. I think that work-life balance is a total sum game. It's not a 24-hour game, right? The other thing is I get a lot of heat because I honestly believe that if you have young children and you are an entrepreneur, you don't work a 9 to 5, that your kids don't really know. There's a social construct that, look, if you have a child, you need to be home at 5 o'clock for dinner. And even if the child's 3 months old, I've had clients that struggled with that. And I was like, you know what? Your 3-month-old doesn't know if you're there at 5 o'clock or not. Now,
You don't even know the time.
right. So for me, I have 2 daughters. They're 25 and 23. So they're older.
Now they know.
Well, now they know. And I think that's what's important. When they were young,
Yeah.
Yes, I would miss a elementary school talent show. I've had to miss, cheer performances or things that they were involved in. But today, I just learned this term. My daughter just told me this like a week ago. I learned this term, nepotism kid. I don't know if it's positive or negative. Do you guys know what that is, nepotism kid?
No, I haven't heard
In social media, the social media influencers who are like, hey, follow me in a day in the life, and then they like jump into their Porsche Boxster and they drive to Tallis Park and they have lunch and everybody's writing like, that's daddy's money, that's daddy's money. And then you've made your way through life because your parents are able to call in favors. You have this great job because of that. But I worked really hard not to create nepotism kids, but to provide them, like, they both could go to any school that they want, university. And when they were older, we, for one Thanksgiving, my wife and I took them to Australia, and we were in Melbourne, and we're having Thanksgiving dinner, which they don't celebrate in Australia, but we were having dinner, and I asked them, I was like, did I make a mistake? I missed, talent shows. I missed, soccer practices and cheer practices. Maybe didn't help you with that, spelling homework. There were times that I was not there because I was working on my business. Did I make a mistake? And they said no. They were like, because we have the life that we have now because of the sacrifices that we made at that time. My oldest daughter went to Indiana University. She's staying with me right now here in Naples. For the holiday break, works at a private equity firm in LA, and during her university she texted me every day. So I have a lot of friends that have like young kids and they sacrifice a ton while they're young and they attempt to create this balance. I don't have very many friends at all whose grown university age daughter
are reaching out to
text them every day. Right. So I feel really good about that. We were way out of balance when they were young. And now it's swung the other way, and I have 20-year-old daughters, and I spend a lot of time with them. I do a lot of things with them, and it's very valuable to me. But I think that for me, this is just an opinion, that time for me is more valuable than at a time when they wouldn't have even remembered whether I was there or not. Yeah. Like, they know now, and they will remember as they have children and they get into relationships, they will remember me being there, showing up for them, doing things.
Right. And the timing and your timing of putting in the work and putting in the time into whatever you were doing was the right timing. Right. So now it gives you more time with them. Are you the type of parent that thinks, okay, I'm successful financially, but I'm gonna make them start from nothing? Or you're the one that
did start from nothing. That was the great thing about when I learned about being when I learned this term nepotism kid. My daughter was like, a lot of my friends think I'm a nepotism kid, but she actually was a great question because she asked me. She said to me, "Did you ever think that you would get to where you are today?" Mm-hmm. Right? Because one of the things that's super important about our story. Those 2 daughters are not from my current wife. So my ex-wife, she's Nicaraguan, met her in Costa Rica. When we moved to the States, she had a challenging time sort of assimilating to the States. We ended up getting divorced. So those 2, my 2 daughters ended up living with me. Mm-hmm. At that time, I had 0. So I go through a divorce and a partnership dissolution, like the 2 worst things financially. So
how old were you?
This would have been like 13 years ago. Which is also super important. 13 years ago, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in the San Francisco Bay Area. So a 1-bedroom apartment probably costs like $3,000 a month.
With 2 girls.
With 2 girls. And then eventually, with who's now my wife, moves in a 1-bedroom apartment. And it was 600 square feet. We had a bedroom with a bed, and we had a couch. And the girls slept on the couch. They had to be taken to school. They don't have school buses for some reason in California. I don't know if they have them in Naples, but you have to drive your kids to school. So we drive the kids to school, and trying to start this business basically from scratch because we had gone through a partnership dissolution, inherited a ton of debt from the partnership dissolution, inherited a ton of debt from the divorce. And so a lot of people too, so to your question, they grew up with nothing. So I didn't have to like say like, hey, you start with nothing. They did start with nothing because I had nothing. I didn't have anything to give them. So it wasn't like I was with them.
This was at
It's
38.
different when they're born and the life is already set.
Right.
Okay,
That
so
was not your case.
Correct.
So going back to before I lose this question, because, for example, but do you believe? Okay, now I have the means. I'm gonna give you a better platform than what I had.
Sure.
And my knowledge.
Absolutely.
I think you put them ahead. I think it's a positive thing.
They're your kids.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I don't
sometimes
want to
people
spoil
think,
them.
okay, I'm just gonna make them.
I'm gonna make
go
them,
through what I went through.
tough it out.
You know, and
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't feel like I want to make them, because that wasn't very fun. So I don't want to make them go through what I went through. I definitely don't want to just spoil them or shortchange them on life lessons. We don't just pay for everything for them. They both have jobs, real jobs that pay well, that we didn't get them. And they pay for their things that they want in life. But I think that, when we do things, like if we're going to go on a trip, we'll pay for them to go, or pay for and they live a great life. I think they appreciate that, though, really, because they also know when we didn't have it.
They've seen both sides.
They've seen both sides. Yeah. They remember when I remember when you remember, like, you go into a restaurant and you look at the menu, and like, so with my wife, and we pick like items based off like how much they cost, right? Like, well, we could get this if you got that, right? Like you're like literally like budgeting on every single thing that you do,
especially with kids. And now they don't want the kids menu, and they want to order from the
100%. Yeah. So I mean, that's what you learn. And then all of a sudden you don't have to worry about that. That's nice, but I don't ever want to forget what that was like. But there are other parts where, you're wondering, am I going to be able to pay rent? I don't ever want my daughters to feel like that. That's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And you had these thoughts with 2 kids, right? And you weren't in your 20s, you were in your 30s, right? So, and this was, I feel like in today's time, it's almost because of socials, and you see a lot of things that it's almost like start a business, start something instant. You're instantaneously rich, or the money starts to flow in, right? But I love hearing stories like yours where, you're not older, but you're in your 30s and still figuring it out in a sense, or you took a hit in a sense, and now where you're at today, it's completely different. So would you say that there is a lot of time?
There's a ton of time, and I think the key, 2 things are key. Is one, understanding that it's a time continuum. Nothing is instantaneous. In fact, one of the things that I have come to learn is that most people that are successful, definitely high net worth individuals, if you are telling somebody, this is important in like sales. If you're like, hey, Shawn, what I could do is our company could come in and we could get you 100 new clients in a month. That scares people that have been through life, because it's too good to be true. There's a time continuum. There's no real thing that gets 100 clients out of nowhere in a month, right? It's just not real. Same thing in investing. Oh, Shawn, you should invest in this thing. We're returning 40%. There's no real thing that's doing that out there, right? Like, so that's become scary to people that have success. It preys upon people that are looking for, I want this quick, right? So one is the time continuum and understanding that. The other part is real important, is delayed gratification. A lot of times what we want is, I want a Ferrari. As soon as you had enough money for the Ferrari, you bought the Ferrari, and then you're back to like you have no money, but you have a Ferrari. And I know a lot of people that are that way. Like they have really cool stuff, but they don't really have any wealth accumulated. And so by my definition, they're not really that successful. You know, even to that point, you know, I'm 51, my wife and I think it was probably 5 years ago, we bought our first house. So that means up to then we had always rented.
Yeah.
Up until like 5 years ago, there's a clip on I'm terrible with time. So I have no idea how long was I in Costa Rica. I have to really rely, like I'd be like 3 years or 30 years. I'm not really sure.
You have a lot going on. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not good at time. But there's a clip on Instagram where I'm talking about this, where it took us so long to buy that first house. After we bought that first house, I think it was like 5 houses that we bought in the next year, right? So by holding that gratification out, because our parents told us, like, you should just save your money and buy a house.
Yeah.
By holding out on that allowed us to build the infrastructure to where now we are in real estate, and we have currently right now we have 3 primary residents, or 3 residences that we have. We got to sell one of them, and then we have a ton of rental properties. But that's not since I was 22. That was all in this small window of time.
Yeah, and that brings
in the past 5 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
So okay, I'm 25.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
just
know.
triggered a lot of questions.
Yes, you know why? Because I see this debate a lot online, and I think everyone does, especially people that are younger. The whole buy a home. Buying a home is a great investment. Buying a home is the worst investment, right? We see those two, and they're so on such opposite sides of of the pole. It's like great investment, no, terrible investment. What is it?
Well, maybe
the right answer.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe define some terms. I think buying a home is different than buying a house. Mm-hmm. So home that's where you're going to live. That's where you're going to raise your kids. Mm-hmm. That's where you want to create this place. It's your home. It's your home. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you could go wrong on that, right? Like some people are like, I don't want to live in an apartment and raise my kids in an apartment. That's not a home. So buying a home is one thing. Now buying a house, that's different, right? So that's an investment. That's a property. That's an asset class. I think that it is a great investment, but I would say that the houses that we own, we don't live in those. So we have 2 homes, and a lot of people could be like, why did you, like, that doesn't even make any sense. But it doesn't matter, because homes are for us and for our kids. It's the place where our family is. Now, houses are different. So houses, we're purchasing them because we see the ability for them to go up in value. The other thing is, with real estate, one of the other things I think in the discussion is you must always ask somebody, or not ask them, but ask yourself, why were they buying a house? There's a lot of reasons to buy a house. In my world, a lot of people that are buying houses are doing it really for tax purposes, right? So you have the accelerated or bonus depreciation. So rather than write a check to pay your taxes, you have the opportunity to acquire an appreciating asset, take massive depreciation to reduce your tax liability, and that just makes sense. Right? Who even cares really? I mean, you do care, but you don't care that much if it goes, doubled or tripled in value, because I took the savings off the top.
Yeah.
Other people, in order to do that, you need something called real estate professional status, right? To get this massive cost segregation studies, and you take advantage of these things. What happens is, if you saw me do that and you didn't know why I did it, and you were like, wow, I saw on social media, Shawn's buying up properties, and you did it, and you were not able to take advantage of the tax savings, then it might not make as much sense for you, right? And so you're just accumulating these homes. You're trying to cash flow them. You may or may not have the knowledge to pull that off. With what's going on in the economy and interest rates, you might find yourself upside down. Then somebody's like, yep, that was a terrible investment. Meanwhile, you did it right. You took all the tax savings. You're cash flowing. You don't have to cash flow a lot, but you're net positive. And for you, the exact same scenario, and he won because he did it for a different reason. So I think also asking why. But I want to go back. I think that, listen, for where you guys are buying a home, if that's important to you, it's not because your parents said so, but because that's what's important to you. That's, I think, is a very smart investment.
What did you? Okay, so if you, when you bought your first property, what was it? A home, a house, a rental?
First we bought a home in Indiana, And again, like, we're always super proud of that, right? You'll never forget that. Like, I bought that, I bought that property. A group that's called Quest 7. It's our highest level group. And it's the quest for 7 figures of active income with 7 figures of passive income. So for me, in the entrepreneurial world, that's sort of like the holy grail, right? If I had 7 figures of active plus 7 figures of passive, that makes the active fun. That takes the stress off of the active. Right. And I think you would all agree, like, if you had zero stress, like, imagine how great you guys would be able to perform. Yeah. If you really didn't even need to, you didn't even care. People came and you're like, yeah, we could do some stuff for you. We charge $100,000 a year, but you had no stress. You didn't care if they said yes or no. Yeah. You were like, whatever. If you want it, great. If you don't, great. Yeah. And then once they said, I want it, you guys are like, okay, whatever. We're gonna just do our work, and it would flow, right? And so I think that's sort of the holy grail. Sometimes too, I think in internet discussions get pigeonholed. We're just talking active, or we're just talking passive. Today,
do you work because you need to, or because you want to?
Well, I because I want to, but I would still say I need to, because I feel like I have basically like unfinished business. Okay. I think that, we only consult with service providers, people that are providing a service in every business that we work with. I know, after having sat with you guys for this time, that you would agree, every business that we work with is created to help people, right? So yes, every business fundamentally as a business is created to make money. If we don't make money, then we can't keep the doors open. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the reason why I love service industry is because those businesses were created to help people. My businesses are all created to help people. So I'm not done helping, and therefore I have a need to wake up tomorrow and help more people. Right. If I didn't do that, if I just played golf, I would still be able to pay my bills, right? But I wouldn't have that fulfillment of helping people. Yeah.
Has the pressure, are you somebody that feels pressure, that you felt pressure, since starting out your journey in being a chiropractor, and then continuing to do different things? Does the pressure change? Does it stay the same? Does it get bigger as you grow?
Yes, there's always pressure, and the pressure changes because the stakes get higher. One of the things too, I would tell people, if you brought up like, well, I'm 25. Well, you should take wild risks when you're 25. Are you married?
No.
You have kids?
No.
So do you have a car?
Yes.
Do you have a house?
No.
So really, only thing you could lose is the car. Yeah. So you could go out and you could get leveraged for $5 million. And the worst thing that could happen is somebody comes and takes your car, and you'd have to declare bankruptcy. You have to deal with this credit thing for a number of years. That's the worst thing that could happen. What about me?
You have a lot more.
Way more to lose. So as you get older, your risk tolerance starts going down. Because I don't want to get a divorce. And I don't want my kids to be on the street, and I don't want to lose my house outright. So all these, when you're young, you have the ability to take risks. So as you're old, just by nature of success, you're accumulating things that make the pressure seem higher. Right. There's more on the line every single day. With every bit of success you get, the stakes get higher, because you have way more to lose. Like, one day maybe you're Mark Cuban and you own the Mavericks. Well, he'd be embarrassed if he lost the Mavericks because of some business snafu that he was involved in, because those stakes are high. So even on little things, he's thinking like, I don't want to make a mistake here on this, what seems to be little, because it could have massive consequences over there. Whereas when you're young, you're like, I don't know, maybe they come take my computers. We can get new computers. It would be it's not going to be the end of the world. Right. Yeah. But later on, the stakes get really high.
Right.
What does the term success mean to you?
Well,
what does it mean to you to be successful?
Well, I think a lot of people, what I hear is people say freedom. That's the number one thing people talk to me about, is they want time freedom and they want economic freedom. And I disagree with that. I mean, I disagree slightly. I mean, it's true, but I think that success means options. I am playing the game of life to have options. It doesn't mean that we always have to fly first class, but I want to be able to fly first class. I also want to be able to fly private, but that becomes my choice. A lot of people don't fly first class or don't fly private because they can't. That's never anything that's never a situation that you want to be in. So we play the game, so we just had options. Options for what? To fulfill any desire that you and your family might have. So maybe my family's not trying to go to Mars, so I don't know that I need to have that option, right? But if I wanted to, if I was like, I think maybe one day I would want to go to Mars. Well, how much could that cost? Well, I don't know. Probably, I need to have a lot of money to have the option to decide whether or not I wanted to do that. That's really what it boils down to. Because when people say, "Well, I have time freedom and economic freedom. I want to do what I want when I want." But what does that mean? Like, that's still, most people that say that they've accomplished that, they still can't go to Mars, right? And then maybe they would say, "Well, that's not what I want." Well, the whole thing is, I just want to have the option. I'm playing the game for options. I want to be able to eat at sales. I want to be able to fly to Monaco. I want to be able to go skiing or play golf. Like what, right? I want to be able to engage with your services or figure it out on myself. That's what I want to be able to do.
And it's because of would you say it's because of options equals experiences?
Not always, because it could also mean things. And that's an interesting thing. We talk a lot about goals and rewards. We could talk about that, but people get hung up because there are some people that are very materialistic, because that probably dominates a lot of discussions. I want this car or that house. Yeah. There are other people that want experiences, but I would also even say, option to, pay for maybe your parents work super hard to help you to get where you are, and you have the option to pay their mortgage. Right. So that is an experience, but a lot of times, like, it's doing things, it's acts of service, it's doing things for others. It doesn't even have to be an experience for me. Right. One of my mentors, one of my best friends, David Meltzer, says, like, if you want to really know what $1 million feels like, give away $1 million. That's how you can understand what $1 million. If you want to know, if you're like, I wish I wanted to, I want to know what $1 million feels like. Well, go out and give away $1 million. You'll feel like it leaving you also facilitates it coming back. Yeah. But most people that even have net worth in excess of $1 million that are millionaires, they don't know what that feels like because they've never been in that situation of giving. They've only received it, right? Right. So sometimes too, it's not just for you. It's not material and experiences for you. It can be for others.
Right. But even in giving, you're receiving. Right.
Oh, 100%.
And at the highest level, I would
absolutely.
say.
I mean, and that's one of the things that's so strange about, I guess society in general, is that we don't really understand that, right? Like, it's a cycle. And in the same thing, that's back to that rewards thing. Most people aren't very good at giving to themselves. And maybe you guys have lived this too. I mean, we're coming to the end of the year where maybe at the beginning of the year, if we rewind, you guys sat down and you're like, we want to do this. We have this goal for our company. And maybe you've accomplished it. Looking at you guys, you probably did. My question to you would be like, okay, so now that you accomplished it, what's different about your life? And for most people, the answer is nothing. To which that now answers why next year, your chances of accomplishing whatever you set out are less. Because you imagine that I was your boss and you guys all work for me, and I say, guys, if we could just bring on 12 clients next year, that's just one a month, I will give you guys a $10,000 bonus. You guys are like, wow, okay. So you go out and you work and you guys diligently bring on one new client every month. At the end of the year, I'm like, wow, we actually exceeded our goal. We actually brought on 36 new clients. Like, that's 3 times more than what I thought you guys would be able to do. So, I'm super happy. Here's your $1,000 bonus. And you were like, wait, I thought you said 10,000, but I gave you 1,000. Right there, what do you think about me?
Well, a lot of things.
Yeah.
Good?
No.
But isn't that exactly what we do to ourselves? Because we say to ourselves, wow, man, if this company could just do this, and we set these goals, then we went out and we did it, and we didn't do anything. Like, we were like, good job. Right. So what happened is your neurology and your brain was like, you know what? Why do I work so hard? Like, why do I didn't get a Lamborghini. Nothing changed. Literally, if I rewind my life back to January of last year, it looks exactly the same. Why did I do all of this? Like, just because I wanted my coworkers to be happy, or like, why did I do all of this? I think it's very important that when we set goals, we also have matched it with a reward that is proportionate, right? So we say, if we do this, I'm going to buy myself, whatever it is, a trip, this thing that I wanted, or I'm going to pay for my parents more. I'm going to do this. And this is the next thing. I watch this over and over. So many people hit the goal, and then they get frozen. They're stuck. they're like, I can't buy that Chanel purse. Like, that just seems like so over the top. It seems so egregious. Like, why would I do that? And the reason why you would do that is because you have to do it, because you told yourself as your own boss that if we do this, this is what's going to happen. And if somebody else told me I was going to get $10,000 and didn't give me $10,000, I'd be furious.
I mean, that's a great conversation. We were just having that conversation in the car where we've been in business for many years, so we know what it is to not have someone on top of you saying, you did an amazing job. Like, we have to do it to ourselves. You know? Like, yes, we did it today. So we were having that conversation because she just got into business, and I was like, don't you feel sometimes that it doesn't get clapped what you do, but you have to kind of high five yourself every day, you know? So bringing, you know, what you're saying, I think it's like, it's great that you're saying that, because it just confirms.
Yeah, and you know yourself. So whatever it is, it could be like, hey, we're going to go to dinner and I'm going to order the most expensive wine, or whatever. You know what will make you. And then here's the next part, is when you, let's say that was it. We go to dinner, we get the most expensive bottle of wine, they bring it. You have to then anchor to that. So it's like when the boss gave you the $10,000 bonus. You have to say like, wow, this is what success feels like. So that the next time when you start the new year or the new goal, you remember, like, you know why I'm doing this? Because I remember sitting down and getting that bottle of wine. I remember being in Chanel and like they brought the purse, and then you said to yourself, wow, this is what success feels like. You just go right into Chanel and buy the thing. And you're like, that's what it feels like. So then the next time that I'm pushing myself or I'm doubting myself or I'm like, no, we can do this. And I remember the reason why I do this. I remember what it felt like to accomplish this.
Right. Are you somebody that when you reward yourself, what is it that you like? Is it cars, or is it?
No, you know what? It's funny. It's little things. And it's delayed gratification. Like I had said, like I could just go out and buy something today. I might call my wife and say like, wow, you know, I saw this thing. I saw this watch. I wanted to buy this watch. I want to get this new AP. And she would say, like, why don't you wait and see if you can do this thing? Like it's something like, well, why don't you get 12 new clients? Bring on 12 new clients and then buy it. Well, I could buy it today, but what I'm going to do is I want to anchor that to something so that I keep continually feeding my own neurology this reward system. But you're in that position that
you can make that choice and have that option.
And it's tied to accomplish. Right? I ask myself to perform, and then when I perform, great things happen in my life. Then I ask myself to perform at a higher level, and then when I perform, my life gets better. I think that's one of the most dangerous things. And so it doesn't have to be like buying houses and cars. Right. It could just be like, hey, you know what? I have a lot of clients, the female clients that are like, I get a manicure every 2 weeks as long as I've brought in 2 new clients that month. Now, if I didn't bring in 2 new clients, we'll be at home trying to figure it out myself. Right? And a lot of people are like, I don't want to do that. So it's not like this. But when you're in the nail salon and you're getting your manicure and pedicure, you're telling yourself like, this is what success feels like. I get my nails done every 2 weeks because I work so hard. Like I don't feel bad about it. When I go, I love drinking this wine or eating this steak, and so I get it every month as long as I did this thing.
It's funny how you have to create your own game, right? You have to, because as you keep climbing, it's like almost like, okay, I can buy this, I can buy that, and you can fall into the game of, well, I bought it, I always wanted it, but I don't feel anything when I have it, you know? So you kind of have to create that emotion, pretty much, right? Of, getting, okay, I'm gonna get there, and I can't afford it right now until I do this, and that.
Yes. Right? So you guys are too young to remember this movie Scarface, but there's a scene there where he is saying
his favorite movie.
There's a scene where he's like, "Is this it?" Like, so he's made it. He's selling drugs, but he has a lot of money, and he's like, "This is it. Like, this is what everything was for this. Like the drinks, the lobster tail, the women, the cars. Like, this is it. This is what we did. Like, and so that's what happens.
The reason why you do that is because, have you ever felt like that?
I've never felt that way. No, okay. I do question though, like, should we keep going? But it goes back to that. Yes, we have to, because the more we have, the more we can give. Right? That's a giant requirement. You can't give what you don't have. Right. So you have to chase success. If you have a passion for service, then ultimately, if you guys were super abundant, you guys could deliver your service that you're passionate about for free. you wouldn't have to charge, right? So you just have to constantly chase in order to have more to give. And I think that's just a big shift. It's not, I'm trying to accumulate so that I can spend or die with it. I want to have as much as I can so that I can give as much as I can to the world. Again, because there's a passion for helping people.
Do you need money? Is money
yes.
Yeah.
The question.
People that say that, like, well, money is not that important. Most of the time, listen to people that say that they have money. So you should say the reason why you say that is because you have it. So go to somebody that doesn't have money and ask them how important is money.
Yeah.
Like, so there's two things, and so that's money's that way. But I think a way that we could even see this even bigger is health. When you have your health, you have a million wishes. When you do not have your health, you have one wish, and that one wish is to be well. If you have cancer, you don't care about anything. You just care about one desire, and that is, I wish I was healthy. Same thing when you have money. Like, no, money's not everything. When and that's, I've been there. When you really can't pay your bills, when you're trying to figure out, life looks different. Meaning of life is totally different. When you question, like, I don't even have enough money to put gas in my car. Things look different. And then at that point, is money everything? Yes. I can't do anything. I can't eat. I can't do anything. I can't sleep under a roof if I don't have money.
Do you think money brings happiness?
No. Money is simply a tool. And that's another thing.
It maximizes happiness if you're happy.
It can, but it also. I'm not a builder. I don't have a lot of tools. A lot of my friends have, in their garage, all these tools, but the tools don't do anything. They're just in the garage. So if I was like, guys, I don't have any tools. I was wondering if you could help me. I want to build like kind of like a doll house for one of my friends for Christmas. You come over. I've got a bunch of wood, but you guys bring the tools. And you showed up and you're like, you had a screwdriver. I was like, what are we going to do with that? Like, we can't build a doll house. You didn't bring anything to cut, and you're like, no, I brought the screwdriver. I was like, well, you have all these tools. Where are they? And you're like, well, I was saving them. Right, that's what people do with money. I was saving it. I just put them all over here in the savings account. But it's not building anything. Okay, well, here's $1. Well, we can't build anything with the dollar. You just brought a screwdriver. Well, why didn't you bring all of the tools? Well, because I was saving it. It doesn't make sense when I say that with tools. But if you just accumulate a ton of money because you were saving that, you don't build anything, you don't do anything constructive, it doesn't buy you happiness. You're just miserable, and you have this giant reserve. You just have a garage full. Your garage is like Home Depot, but when you walk into Home Depot, that's not happiness. It's what the tools make that make people happy.
So can you agree, for example, a friend of mine told me one day, oh, you can't buy happiness with money. And I said, well, maybe you never did. Right.
Well, money gives you options to shop.
Exactly. It gives you the options to be able to, because if you, for example, are able to take your family out and be able to pay for everybody, that might bring you some type of happiness, right? I mean,
but I had to leave your pocket to do that. So
exactly,
it's a tool that can be leveraged, but just the mere fact that it exists doesn't. Just because you have $500 million in a bank account, you won't be happy. You've got to take the $500 million and pay for your family. Or buy, go and buy toys for young kids, or do whatever it is. You've got to do something with it, because in and of itself, the pursuit of just accumulating wealth does not bring happiness.
Right.
In fact, I would say that just the pursuit of accumulating wealth probably brings a lot of unhappiness.
And living like if you don't have it, just saving it, and then not traveling, not going out. Right? That for me is not being successful, because what's the point of having so much money just save there and living your life like if you're poor? There has to be a moment that you have to enjoy too. Well,
yes, and you guys are great because you talk about a lot of great things. So money is actually not a thing anymore. So money is strictly a faith-based concept. It's based entirely on faith. It trips people out, but money is a spiritual thing. There is no proof at all anymore that you have any money. You're like, well, no. And so you just go on an app, and there's like, but where is the money? Like, it's not anywhere. Like, it just says so. So that is entirely faith. That, like, now we're like, talking about there's a God. How do you know? Well, because they said, but it's the same thing. Well, how do you know you have $5? Because it's right there. It's in the box. Like, that's it. So it's faith based. you are, because of that, you are in relationship with your money. And if I told you that, look, my wife and I have a unique relationship. I never talk to her. And I haven't talked to her in 8 years. I haven't seen her in 8 years either. I just keep her in a home in Indiana, and she watches TV. She has very little interaction with other people, but that's how she likes it. How strange would you think that is?
Yeah.
But that's what we do with our money.
Yeah.
Right? So if I want to have a great relationship with my wife, by definition, I talk to her, I check in with her, I keep my commitments to her, I spend time with her. So many people like just put their money in the box, in the app, and they only look at it when they think they're low. And even then, most people that are kind of living on the margin and it's low, they don't even want to look at it, and that's why they don't have money, is because they're not in relationship with it, right? You must get into relationship with your money, whether you have a little or a lot.
Right.
It all depends on your relationship. So likewise, if I'm in great relationship with my money, the universe will give me more. The universe will provide more because it is spiritual. There's no proof of it.
Right.
It just comes to the people who are great custodians and in great relationship with their money.
Right.
That means that they're very comfortable with it. So that would be, wouldn't you think it was weird too if you're like, hey, Shawn, aren't you married? I've seen on social media your wife, she's incredibly beautiful. And I was weird. I was like, well, we don't really talk about that. You'd be like, well, that was weird. Like, I'm pretty sure that's his wife, and you didn't want to talk about it. How many people do you bring on your show that don't want to talk about money?
Yeah.
Like, why would we be weird about it? I've been abundantly blessed. I hope that you guys are abundantly blessed. Let's talk about it, right? Because it's not a weird thing.
Right.
It's just
right.
like, hey, are you wearing a black shirt? I don't want to talk about it.
No,
yes, I am.
And I feel like sometimes that's an uncomfortable conversation for people that haven't reached wealth, or they just don't want to. Usually, the people that don't want to talk about money are the people that don't have it, right. Because like we were blessed to meet a lot of people in the past few years where they're very wealthy, and they taught us a lot, and the conversation was always around money, and because that to us is like learning, and and that brings my question to you, like, do you think that starting a business with no money and starting a business with money, it's a completely different game?
100%.
Right?
Yeah. But you're not out of it. If you don't have money, you just have to substitute tenacity.
Yeah.
Yes. So what do you think about not paying yourself at the beginning?
I had a question similar to this.
Keep that business going. And the reason I ask you is I had a friend, he told me one time when I first started in business, he's like, you should always pay yourself first. And I was like, okay, listen.
That's impossible.
Yes.
So I mean, and the book is Profit First by Michael Witz, and he's a great guy. Met him, and he's a fantastic guy. But it's just that's not real. If you're just starting your business and you received $1,000 from your clients and your rent is $1,000, you better pay the rent first. You don't get to get the $1,000 and then tell the landlord, like, hey, dude, paid myself first. It doesn't work. I'll tell you who else who gets paid before you, your employees.
Yeah.
So you can't say like, hey guys, I'm not paying you guys out this month.
I'm going on vacation.
I'm fine. But I read the book, Profit First.
Maybe next month.
They're not coming back. They're not showing.
And the funny thing with that is that he's it's an amazing person that I met. He's a developer here in Naples. He used to be a developer. He's now retired, but he told me, well, you should pay yourself first. And I was like, okay, Mark, so if you have 3 apples, do you feed your kids first, or do you eat the apples first? And he's like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And I was like, have you ever started a business with no money? He's like, no. Then the conversation, let's start there. The conversation.
And what are your thoughts on businesses that take 10 years to be in profit?
Well, that's a long time.
Or break even.
That's a very long time.
People who say I didn't pay myself for 10 years. 5
I mean, it depends. The business models are very different. Look at retail, for example, which I don't deal with, but retail, clearly we can do 11 months of losing money and then recover it all, right, during the holiday season, depending on what our product is. E-com, very similar. I might spend a ton of money for a very long time looking for that one big break where I find the right product with the right need. I have a buddy that made millions of dollars, a big time ClickFunnels guy, helped me create a company. We partnered with him. We made $1 million in our first year because of his expertise, but he goes through a lot of different products. Not every product wins. And so I could see maybe in some instances, for me in my world, I like to be very decisive. I think that all successful people are decisive. We live in a very disempowered world where people have a very hard time making decisions. So I do believe that that is probably the one and only common trait amongst all successful people that I've met. Hopefully you guys don't have this issue, but it comes lunchtime. For people watching, lunchtime, somebody says, where do you want to eat? And you see how difficult it is for people to even choose what they want for lunch. In business, it can't work that way, right? We just make a decision. But at the same time, being decisive means that we get out of bad situations quick. I don't know, man, if I was in a losing situation for 10 years, I'd have to have been like super convicted and passionate about it. Like I would be like, it had to have been something that I was like, this is literally going to change the world. Yeah. And I just got to keep pressing on because once it breaks through, we're going to win big. But usually, most things that I do, and this might seem like a little bit of a contradiction, but I do think that the mark of a truly successful individual is the ability to hold two seemingly opposing ideas simultaneously in one's mind. So on one hand, I want to be decisive. At the same time, I rarely will do things that I'm not committed to for the long term. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like, again, back in your industry, if you were telling me like, hey, let's run some ads, I would be thinking in my head, well, I'm not going to run any ads unless I'm committed to doing it for like at least a year, but probably more in my mind, like 3 years to 5 years. Why don't you do this thing? Whatever it is, like I wouldn't want to try things just for like a one-off. That rarely produces a mega result for you. Just basically trying to win the lottery. But at the same time, I'll try something, but I usually will give myself 90 days. Like, I'm just not going to make a judgment on it for the first 90 days. It's easy to, like, you know, and again, same thing in your industry. It's easy to contract in the digital marketing space, run a few ads, and then have the client saying, it's not working. Well, that's the point. Like, we're starting. We're doing research. We still have a lot of tweaking to do. Yeah. So whatever that time frame is, so if you told me, listen, in our industry, it's not 90 days, it's 6 months or whatever it is, I would commit to that to pretty much not look at it, like to give it a chance and not judge it. And then, okay, at the 6 month point or whatever, and for me, you typically at 90 days, I'm going to run it. Not even going to really care if it works or not. At 90 days, we're going to have we're going to sit down and we're going to make a decision about where we're going. So, man, to do that for 10 years, right? That would be difficult, right?
Have you do you use debt to grow, or what do you think about that?
Everybody uses debt to grow. That is another tool.
That's another tool.
And it's very unfortunate.
Well, what about the people that say debt? No debt. That's bad.
No, debt is not bad. How can debt be bad?
What?
I mean, that's a psychological thing, right? Yeah. If you have a track record and somebody was like, look, I had a friend tell me this. So we were looking at an investment and they were like, yeah, this person, it was an outsized return, is going to give 40% on this. And I was like, well, you know, how much money do they have in this deal? And they were like, oh, they're pouring money into it. I was like, well, if it produces 40%, why would they even let you come in at all on the deal? And he was like, oh, that's a good point. I said, well, how about this? You're really good. So for you guys, how about this? We just make another agency. I'll put all of the money in and you will work it and you'll get to keep 30%. How does that sound? It should sound terrible. Because you'd be like, well, wait, no, with the money that we make, why do you get to keep 70%? And I'm like, because I put the money in. So it works in reverse, right? So that is, somebody else is going to help you. They're going to give you the money. You're going to leverage that. And you're going to give them, you know, in today's world, what, 5, 7? And if it was an investment and you're paying them 10, 13, 16%, they're like, this is great. Yeah. If you understood that, and you're like, wow. So whatever it costs us to make another agency, all we would have to do is take that money. And we would have to, let's say hypothetically, it was you needed $100,000 to open up another, to scale. Mm-hmm. You would only have to give me back like $13,000 a year. And I would think you guys were geniuses. I would be like, how are you doing? What? So at that point, you would be like, whoa, wait, I only have to give the capital investor like $13,000 on 100,000 and they'll think I'm a genius, then you're like, well, we can make 58 of these, right? Like we could start to now move into scale, or we could just scratch and claw till we have 100, and then we can make one. Because here's the thing: if somebody gave you 100,000 and you returned them 13 or 15%, and then after year 1 and after year 2, it was very clear to them that you were going to, very consistently give them 15% on their money, they would be like, "How much more of these can we make?" Right. They would be like, "What if I just give you $1 million? Could we make 10, and now you can just give me back like $150,000 a year on that?" Because like this is good, and my 100,000 is not gone. I see it's here. It's equipment. It's okay, and you keep giving me back 15% on my money. Then more money comes. Well, that's how, and it's unfortunate, but that's how debt works. Because people who have a lot of wealth are afforded a lot of debt, and people who don't have any wealth can't get debt because they don't have the track record. Right. So to them, maybe debt's bad.
Yeah. And I think that is such a higher level thinking, right? Especially even because some people have money, but they don't think long term like that. And they putting in $1 million, they want to own,
If you were in a normal level and a lower level, will you still use debt, or you will pay everything
cash?
You
would always use debt.
Okay, thank you.
You will always
even if you're paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, if I was paycheck to paycheck, the debt would allow me to not be paycheck to paycheck. So if somebody would give me a cushion, which would allow me to not have to, and again, which is very difficult, if you're paycheck to paycheck and something or someone is offering you money, I would take it. We lived through this weird time, and I don't, it's just, for anybody that's watching that has a business, it was a tough time for small businesses, this whole pandemic, COVID. One, just the pandemic in and of itself. Two, people that had decent businesses and their business was affected but still made decent money literally had to sit back and watch all these people get free money. But if you made money, you didn't get anything. I didn't get free money. Nobody would give me free money, and so I was like, but everybody else got free money.
We were in the food industry at that time, and we couldn't get any money because we couldn't prove that we were losing money.
Right. So that's so in that scenario, wouldn't you have appreciated getting some money so that you weren't stuck? Because now you just doubled down on how difficult it's going to be to get out of this because nobody has money. I can't operate. I'm being mandated to close, and nobody will give me money. So if I was paid paycheck to paycheck, and there was something that was offering me money, so that's why when, thank goodness, PPP came and EIDL, with all of my clients, I was like, a lot of them said that, like, well, I don't need it. I was like, but you should take it. Like, you could always just give it back. Right? You took it, you're like, oh, I thought about it for a year, because you didn't need to make payments for 2 years, and then just pay it back to them. But what if something happened and you found yourself paycheck to paycheck? Wouldn't it be nice that you had, and it's debt, so you do have to pay it back with interest,
and it buys you time.
Yes, it buys you time, and it buys you the opportunity to do bigger things. But
people think that they would have more debt monthly.
Do you think that's a thinking that it's because they don't know how to actually use that tool?
Well, and also manage it. I think sometimes it's easy. I'm the chair of a board of a chiropractic college. A chiropractor is going to graduate with student loan debt, probably around $300,000. I think most, at their ages, in their 20s, most 20-year-olds don't really appreciate what that means to owe $300,000. Doesn't even equate. So it was easy, like, just sign these things, and the money, because again, they never touched it. It just went, and then they got this thing, and it's like, hey, now you owe $300,000, and they're like, well, whatever. And then you go out into business, and you're like, oh, so managing debt is also important. You have to have thought through, what are my payments going to be? What's my interest rate? Like, I'm not saying just go, crazy willy-nilly. Don't take EIDL money and buy a boat. And I know people that did that, right? Like, that's dumb. If we're able to, again, it's a tool, and it's a mismanagement of the tool. If I
use it to make more.
Yes, use it always to make more.
Right.
Yeah. Did your daughters go to college?
Yes,
they did.
Did
you
make them
require?
No. In fact, I honestly, my oldest daughter works in the banking industry and private equity. you have to go to college. There's certain things, if you want to be a doctor, things that require a license, you want to be a lawyer, CPA, you got to go to college. My youngest daughter works in UI and UX at GM. Digital design, graphic design, that does not require a college degree. She has a college degree in informatics. Well, maybe it helped her, but I'm sure she could have that job without her degree. So I think it really depends what you want to go into.
Right.
Just being an entrepreneur, I would just, that's what you want to do. If you wanted to be me, other than the chiropractic part, I wouldn't go to college. I would start getting going as soon as I could.
Right. But the chiropractic part was crucial in your journey. Was crucial.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't do that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So go for things that pay well. That you need to go to college for things that you need to go to college.
It require a license.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it will end up that way eventually. I think, colleges will be, and people hate when I use this word, but it's a trade school because you need a license to practice the thing that you want to do. So they have to teach you the trade. Otherwise, if you don't need a license to, to create websites, to run ads, to create creative, to learn copy, well, then why did I go to college for? And there are colleges, there's universities that teach that stuff. Yeah. Absolutely. But you don't have to. I mean, you could probably learn more coming here and sitting with you guys than I could.
And learn faster
in the classroom. Yeah.
Right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Black Diamond?
Black Diamond Club is a group of now over 700 service providers. We created a community where we celebrate people's success, where it doesn't matter if it's your first dollar or you made $100 million, we support each other, we cheer for each other, and also where we share experiences where, it doesn't matter where you're at. Like I'm trying to open another office or I'm trying to open my first office. I wonder what kind of printer I should buy to, who can I be talking to? One thing we didn't talk about is relationship capital. Introductions, facilitating help. That's what Black Diamond Club is all about. My wife and I put out a members only podcast every Monday. We also put out a public facing podcast called None of Your Business every Wednesday. It's on all the podcasting platforms. And then we do events. We do a sales event. We do a marketing event, and then we do a money mindset event every year.
Are there like tiers to the membership, or is that everything?
The membership is
a one time?
Yeah, the membership is $99 a month, and you're in our Facebook group, and you get our weekly podcast. There is our members get a steep discount on our live event, so they get to go to that. And then we do within the group we have a group coaching. We have some coaches that work with some of our clients, and then my wife and I also have private clients. And we also have the Quest 7 group, which is phenomenal. Those are the overachievers.
Do you have events coming up in Naples?
Our Quest 7 group is here in Naples in February. So we'll be meeting there. We have, I think we're meeting with Valco from sales. We're having Dan Cow from Naples Porsche talk to the group. We run around and do fun things together. That one's in Naples. Our marketing workshop, I believe, in November, it might be in Naples. Marketing in November is always either in Boca or Naples. Okay. So it's in one of those two. That one's always super fun. Typically, we have about 300 to 350 people at these events. We always have special guest speakers, and we never announce the guest speakers to sell tickets. Our marketing workshop was great. It had a guy, Chance Weber. He's a digital marketer. It had Robin Alex. He is the founder of High Level. That a lot of people use that as their CRM. We had David Meltzer, who is my wife and I's mentor. So I always have like big name people that drop in and present. They're super fun.
Sounds super fun.
Yeah, High Level is great. I'll tell you, we use it here.
We use High Level, yeah. Robin was super awesome, and that was super rare because Robin typically markets to agencies, right? And so to get him to come and speak to a group of individuals, we have a few agencies as clients, but wouldn't make it worth his time. And it was super cool for him to kind of peel back the curtain as a single user to kind of look at what they're doing, what they're planning. And actually, our program was in November. We've already seen some of his stuff that he said from stage roll out, the affiliate program, things like that have already started to come. I think discount codes, run through there. And so, yeah, it was super cool to see. He was like telling us about it, and then it was like a couple weeks later, we were like, oh, look, it's in there already. So that was super cool.
Well, Shawn, I hate to wrap this up
We can keep
because
going
I really enjoyed this episode. I feel like we gained a lot of knowledge and valuable things, and there's nothing like listening to somebody that has experience. I just think you can't beat that. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. And is there anything that you want to leave off on, like that?
Oh yeah, I always we prepared for all of your audience a special gift. It's at www.gethopetoday. We've put like a ton of my wife and I's best content, courses, even things that we've sold for thousands of dollars. It's I don't even think it's gated. It's just all there, just for everybody. If it is gated, it's just name and email. We're not going to sell you stuff. It's just get you access. And maybe if it's gated, it's because you probably need a username and password maybe to access it. But www.gethopetoday.
Get Hope Today.
Tons of stuff. Hopefully keep you busy. Look in there, see what kind of things you like or want more information on. Consume the content. Hopefully it provides value.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.